Here are some of the main things you're going to want to know heading into Season 4. Number 1, speed up your inventory management by holding Control on your keyboard and simply left-clicking each item. It automatically drops it for you. You don't need to manually drag it out. Just like in D2R, you can save a lot of time getting rid of your trash while you're out in a dungeon or in the Hell Tides so you can get back to slaying demons. Number 2, you can now boost the horse in town. So you never need to walk around town slowly from one side to the other. Just use your horse and hit that spur button. In Season 4, the most fun and most effective way to level up is in Hell Tides. Because now, for the first time ever, we're able to access Hell Tides from level 1 in World Tier 1 and 2. And it's been buffed a lot in terms of density and the cinders you get. Plus, it's open world, so there's going to be a lot of players in the same instance, other than the people in your party, and each player around you will have their own bar that fills up, so there's going to be a chain reaction where every player's bar is filling up, which in turn spawns a bunch of hordes. It's going to be awesome. But make sure you do not die. If you die in Hell Tides, you're going to lose 50% of your current cinders, and on top of that, if you die, your Helltide bar progress completely resets to 0. It's basically hardcore at this point. And there's also this new boss that spawns once the 3 pedestals have hearts inserted into them, and if you're one of the people who inserted one of these hearts, you're going to get more loot from the boss. Now, you don't get more loot if you put in 2 or 3 hearts. 1 is enough to get that bonus in loot over the people who just show up for free. With this new Helltide leveling strategy, you can get to World Tier 3 within the first 1 to 2 hours. Before you enter any capstone dungeons, make sure you temper and optimize your gear. Another good thing to know is that dungeon events are amazing for experience. So once you start doing nightmare dungeons, look out for these events. You know, the cursed shrines or chests, or you know, when you're gonna survive the 5 hordes, etc. Do not skip them. Next, I suggest you salvage all the items that you're not going to use instead of selling them, because the materials you get are going to be way more valuable than the gold, because there are simply better ways to get gold other than selling your items. And you'll pretty much get more gold than you need automatically from just playing the game. But if you desperately need gold at some point, just do Tree of Whispers. And in the endgame, you're easily going to be able to get billions of gold just from trading if you're into that. When you're playing on a new season, you get access to seasonal blessings. And you have a couple choices in terms of which one you want to benefit from first. And I recommend you always do the experience one first, because you're leveling up and it's going to be useless in the endgame. And after the experience one, for Season 4, we have one that boosts your glyph experience. Do these 2 first. It's going to save you a lot of time. Oh, and a bonus fact, in Season 4, each class is going to be getting legendaries tied to a specific build for that class, which is also going to help you a lot on your journey. There are some important caps to be aware of in the game. For example, resistances, you definitely want all of them to reach 70% in order for you to be tanky and survive stuff. When it comes to armor, they have dropped the cap a lot. It's now 9,230, so make sure you tick these boxes. Now, when it comes to attack speed, the cap is quite complicated, because there's 2 separate buckets that both have a 100% attack speed cap, and different items and effects in the game go into different buckets. But an oversimplified version to look at this is the affixes on your items go into bucket number 1, and a lot of the legendary aspects, like the orange text, goes into bucket number 2. It's very hard to reach 100% in both of these, but at least now you know. And for the first time in Diablo 4, we now have a way to increase the AoE size of our skills. But the cap for this is 100%. When it comes to movement speed, same thing there, you need 100% to reach the cap. And when it comes to cooldown reduction, 75% is the cap. So if you go above that, it doesn't do anything. Now, there are 3 steps to crafting and optimizing an item in Diablo 4. The first one, which has been the case since the launch of the game, is to be able to re-roll one of your current affixes. You do it at the Occultist, you choose one that you don't really need, and you hope that you re-roll it into something better. Number 2 is the new one, the tempering system. Tempering allows you to add 2 additional affixes to your item. And the third and final step to crafting an item is masterworking. And all masterworking does is it simply boosts the current values of the affixes you have. You can masterwork an item 12 times, and every 4 steps, so 4 and then 8 and 12, it has a chance to crit one of your affixes to give it an even bigger boost. So if you're really lucky, you'll crit the same affix 3 times at 4, 8, and 12, which will make that one affix like really godlike. If these crits don't land where you want them to, you can reset your masterworking and start over from scratch, but this burns and kind of wastes the masterworking materials that you already used. I mentioned tempering, and in order to temper, you're gonna need a recipe, like these manuals that you find out in the world. So you can't just rock up to the blacksmith at level 1 and expect to temper. No, you're gonna have to find these manuals, and early on, if you're lucky enough to get, for example, a natural resistance tempering manual, you can all of a sudden easily fix your resistances when you head into World Tier 3 and 4. The maximum item power in Diablo 4 is 925, and this used to be quite difficult to come by, but now all items in the endgame, from monsters level 95 onwards, all items are gonna be 925, so you don't really need to worry about that anymore. Uber uniques. There's 8 uber unique items in Diablo 4. And in the previous 2 seasons, they've been the best in slot items for pretty much all classes. So the endgame gameplay for everyone previously was to just kill Duriel hundreds, if not thousands of times in order to get these uber uniques. But the requirement for these items is changing in Season 4 because unique items cannot be tempered. And the best items now are more often than not going to be really optimized, crafted legendaries. This doesn't mean uber uniques are bad, it simply means that they sort of hit a ceiling where other items can outshine them. This is great because you're not going to have to smash your head against the wall to try to find these items like before. But if you really do want to find them, there's a tiny chance that the uber uniques will drop from any monster above level 55 only. And then there's a significantly higher chance they will drop from Duriel or Andariel. And the highest chance to find these uber uniques are going to be from the tormented bosses, which are level 200. They're very difficult. But they're not only difficult, they're actually a very efficient way to farm because they only cost 3 times more boss materials to summon than their regular version, but they give 5 times the reward. So if you have a really strong build, killing the level 200 bosses is the way to go. You can also craft any uber uniques of your choosing using 4 resplendent sparks. You get resplendent sparks by salvaging uber uniques, and in Season 4 you're gonna get 3 resplendent sparks easily. One from killing uber Lilith, one from killing your first level 200 boss, and then the third one comes from completing the seasonal questline. And in order to get your hands on the 4th resplendent spark, you're gonna have to find your own uber unique item. But some of them are worse than others, so if the uber unique that you find isn't that good, just salvage it, and now you have 4 resplendent sparks to craft any of the other ones that you might want. Now, when you salvage any legendary item in this game, that aspect automatically goes into your Codex of Power at that same level. But let's say you find a perfect aspect at level 12, that's not going to be perfect in the end game because the ceiling for how high that aspect can roll, it goes up as you get into World Tier 4. So if you're lucky and find a bunch of perfect aspects whilst leveling, that doesn't really help you much in the end game because you're gonna have to find them again at a higher level. There are now greater affixes in the game, and what this means, it simply means it's a really juiced up version of that affix. It's always going to be max rolled and 50% stronger than a regular affix. These are not going to be essential for most builds, but this is how you're going to min-max your character in the end game. And if you find an item with 3 or 4 greater affixes, chances are you're going to be able to trade that for billions of gold if you want, unless you want to use it yourself, of course. Speaking of trading, a lot of people find it daunting and they don't really engage with it because there's no in-game marketplace, but I'm telling you, it's super easy and saves so much time on the journey of building out a really strong character. The website a majority of D4 players use is diablo.trade. You just screenshot your item in the game and you paste it on the website and click post, and it automatically detects the stats of the item and the affixes so that people can search for it. And then you just wait and you'll start getting messages on the platform of, people's offers. Your next challenge is, how do you know how much your item is worth? There's 2 ways to find out. Number 1 is to simply search for a very similar or the same item that you have and to see what it's going for other players. Or just wait until you've gotten a couple of offers from people to get a sense of what they're willing to offer. Or, you can just trust your gut. If it seems like a good offer, just accept it. With a note that if it is a godly item with a bunch of greater affixes, don't necessarily sell it really fast because you're desperate. Sometimes it can take a couple days for you to find the right buyer. Obols, the gambling material in the game, are actually very useful now, even in the endgame, which they didn't used to be, because they always roll item power 925 and they can get greater affixes. So if you're into gambling, this could be a great way to get rich in Diablo 4. Oh, and the new cap for how many obols you can carry is now 2,500. It used to be just 1,000. Finally, I have a couple settings you should check out. Firstly, the WASD movement. If you don't like moving around with your mouse clicks, you can now do it on your keyboard. And arguably, most importantly, you can now zoom out. Diablo 4 is pretty cramped onto your character, but now there's a setting you can zoom out like 10-15% or something. That's it, folks. Have fun in Season 4.